Well, my name's Jude LaCava from Fox 10 Sports, and I want to welcome all of you to the 2013 Cactus League Luncheon. On the way over here, I called back to Cleveland, Ohio, and my very best friend, 28 degrees and blowing snow. So enjoy the spectacular backdrop to what should be a fabulous luncheon. I came to town back in the late 80s, and I say that before we get started as a frame of reference. And the memories of Mr. Patterson out there at Hohokam Field in Mesa, and where the A's at that time trade, Phoenix Municipal Stadium, was kind of the hub. Down in Tucson, it was High Corbett Field. And I say that if you can look at that visualization of the late 1980s. The Arizona Diamondbacks did not even exist. Joe Garagiola Sr. was just starting a campaign to try to bring baseball to the state of Arizona. And now, look at this. Almost some 25 years later, the facilities, the growth, this is even bigger than baseball. This is Arizona's industry for tourism and economy and pride. It is simply spectacular. From east to west, from Salt River Fields to Surprise, Arizona, to what's happening with other facilities in Mesa, it is absolutely tremendous. And I salute all of our leaders that had the vision, from the days of Bill Veeck to our leaders of today, that have created this industry that we call the Cactus League. We have a couple of very special baseball guests we'll get to in a minute. I'm talking about perhaps the greatest pitcher of his era. Greg Maddux will be stopping by, and arguably, when you think of great third baseman of all time, I'm talking about of all time, you think of George Brett and Mike Schmidt. George Brett will be with us. The growth out here has been spectacular, and with that, it's a real honor to introduce to you the Honorable Mayor of Surprise, Sharon Walcott. Sharon, come on up here with a few words, please.
Thanks, Jude. Well, after what a very unusually cold winter for Arizona, and I don't know about you, but this was the worst I've ever experienced since I've been here. What a great day. What a great day to welcome back the Cactus League, the beginning of the Cactus League. And it's always, always great to have spring training come back to Arizona. So we're thrilled as a city to welcome you here for the Cactus League Luncheon right here in Surprise for the very first time. We're delighted to have you here. And I want to welcome also some of those leaders that Jude mentioned before that are joining us here today. First of all, I'd like to welcome my very good friend, Mayor Georgia Lord from Goodyear. And also, I would like to welcome my very good friend from all the way from Tempe. Talk about regionalism. We really do care. Mayor Mark Mitchell from Tempe. Thanks, Mark. Also joining us today are Councilman Bill Stipp, Wally Campbell, and Jennifer Barber, all from Goodyear. And we have our Goodyear staff joining us, are Brian Dahlke and Bob Beckley and Jim Rumpeltis, all from Goodyear. So again, it's wonderful to have friends from across the valley welcoming here the return of the Cactus League. And so for those of you who are making your first visit to Surprise, let me say welcome. We are delighted to have you here, and we hope that you are prepared to be impressed. Isn't this an absolutely beautiful facility? In fact, we are so beautiful. Even USA acknowledged us as the #2 facility in Arizona. That is really something to be proud of. We are so proud. So please enjoy your visit here with us today, and be sure to come back for a game or two, because no place has that Cracker Jack feel quite like Surprise Stadium. We really are proud of the entertainment venue that we have here, and we're very proud of our partnership with the Texas Rangers and the Kansas City Royals. To our friends with the Rangers and Royals and to all of the teams represented here today, welcome back. It's so wonderful to see you here again. We look forward to a very, very exciting season. And this is such a thrilling time for Arizona because the energy and the excitement and community support produced by the Cactus League, it's unrivaled anywhere. And for us here in Surprise, this marks our 11th Cactus League season. And we're going to have 22 games here this year. Wow, that is fantastic. So that's quite a treat for those of us who are baseball fans and those baseball fans from all over the Valley and all over the USA who will be joining us. The stadium is a real focal point for our community. We host everything from Easter egg hunts to 4th of July celebrations, and our Cactus League relationship is one of the most important ways we can connect to the region and to Arizona. Regional connections, a sense of understanding one another, are key to the long-term success of not only Surprise and the West Valley, but the entire valley and the state. And we are committed to making those connections stronger. But today is a celebration and a welcome of greeting old friends and sharing the warmth that makes the Cactus League so special to us all. And so we very much welcome the presence of people like, Mr. George Brett and Mad Dog Greg Maddux. We look forward to having them speak to us today. So thank you again for your presence here, for enjoying us in this very special celebration. And please, again, come back and enjoy a Cactus League game today, tomorrow, and for the rest of the season. We certainly enjoy having your presence here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. My old colleague Kevin McCabe is out there in the audience, and it's always funny because I reference a couple of spots I was fortunate enough to work in before and live in before I came out here. My very first interview back in 1981 was with the left fielder of the Toledo Mud Hens, a guy by the name of Ron Washington, who is now the manager of the Texas Rangers. And I think I remember a cow milking contest at Ned Skeldon Stadium in Toledo. Minor league baseball is a heck of a lot of fun. And then going back to eastern Pennsylvania, John Daniels has roots, in a matter of speaking. He married a girl from Catasauqua, Pennsylvania. And when you look at what he's done in baseball and his roots back to Kutztown and eastern PA and now a very successful GM, you have to really look long and hard to find a major league team that provided more excitement over the last few years in the postseason than the Texas Rangers. The drama, the memorable moments, absolutely, positively unforgettable. Without further ado, I give you the general manager of the Texas Rangers, John Daniels.
Appreciate it. Either I'm in the wrong place or my wife's got a secret because she's from L.A. So that's just a joke. Just lighten it up here. First of all, thank you for having me, and I want to thank the Cactus League and in particular our partners here in the city of Surprise, Mayor Walcott, Mark Coronado, the City Council, Jim Mallon, and Joey Brazil, and the outstanding staff they have here at this facility. Obviously, every year we come out here, and so quite literally our year starts here, and our hopes for the season start here. But when we started our rebuilding program about 5-6 years ago, and quite frankly, we weren't very good. The two questions I would get when I first got this job are, how old are you, and when are you guys going to get some pitching? And wasn't too much I could do about the first one, but organizationally, we really set out to address the latter, and we wanted to go from kind of an all-or-nothing, one-dimensional slugging club to a championship-caliber team. And obviously, you got to be able to pitch to do that. This is my flyover, by the way. And so when we recommitted to building from within a scouting and development base, really focused on our pitching, the first time that we felt like we were onto something was in Instructional League in 2007. When our scouts and our development folks came out here, and for those of you that don't know, Instructional League is when we bring out our best young prospects in October. at the end of each season to work on things going forward. And when they sat down and looked at the guys that were out here on the backfields in Surprise, the reports came back, hey, we have something. This isn't just, a wait and see type deal. We legitimately have something. And out on that field were Elvis Andrews and Matt Harrison and Derek Holland, Neftali Feliz, Nelson Cruz was there working on some things, Mitch Moreland, and really the core of the team that, the last 3 years has been in the playoffs and the World Series twice. So quite literally, the roots of our success have started out here in the Cactus League, in Surprise, in this facility that 11 years later looks just as good, if not better, than it did in day one. And that's a tribute to the staff here in the city and at the facility. Fast forward now a couple years, and after this past season, success in some ways. We won 93 games and made the playoffs, but a disappointment given the expectations we had for ourselves, and we exited way too quickly. We sat down at the end of the year and decided it was a natural time for some level of change, both in the roster and philosophically where we were going. We wanted to kind of get back to our roots, which really for us was opening up some opportunity for some of our best young players. And we feel like we're back where we were 5-6 years ago, where this time instead of Elvis Andrews and Holland and Matt Harrison, now it's Jerickson Profar and Mike Olt and a number of other guys in that group. And so while we're not sure that those guys are going to break in with this club, our standard to make this team is quite high. We're going to give them an opportunity this spring. And on top of that, we've brought in some veteran guys to help stabilize the club, because while we're looking to get younger, we also expect to win and compete this year. And so it sounds kind of odd in the middle of a semi-youth movement to bring in guys like 37-year-old Lance Berkman and 36-year-old A.J. Pierzynski, but we feel the mix kind of works. And so we have high expectations this year. It is a little bit different. I think our fans back home and our fans out here in Arizona, some of the Josh Hamilton and Mike Young and Mike Napoli that have been big parts of our club the last few years, obviously they're elsewhere, but we feel that as a team we're every bit as strong and are looking forward to continuing to watch this group grow. And a little bit of a unique spring for all of us here in baseball and in the Cactus League with the WBC. Going to go out and see some of our players perform on a bigger stage, but it actually works out quite well for us because it gives us a number of at-bats and innings to give to some of our young guys that we want to see compete for this club. But overall, we can't speak highly enough about our experience here in the Cactus League and specifically here in Surprise. This facility, this city, this community has embraced us from day one, and we really appreciate that and look forward to a long relationship beneficial on both sides. Thank you very much.
Think about this. 13 All-Star appearances, World Series championship. I still am astounded by this when you really just digest and reflect on hitting 390 back in 1980. I've said this at the outset of our luncheon. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, third baseman of all time, and it's a real pleasure to bring him up here for a few words and a little bit of Q&A about what's happened out here. George Brett. Come on up, George.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I know there's a question and answer period coming up, but I started playing baseball back in, I graduated high school in 1971 and was drafted by the Kansas City Royals then, and went to Fort Myers, Florida. Well, my first stop was Sarasota, Florida. The major league camp from then on was in Fort Myers, Florida. I was there for about 10 years, and then we moved to Orlando. So all my playing days were always done in Florida, and about 12 years ago, I get a call from the Royals saying we're changing our spring training facility. We're going to Arizona. And I said, what are you guys, crazy? And I remember flying here with the Glass family, meeting Nolan Ryan here, and the mayor. What was the mayor's name back then that brought this team here, brought this franchise? Yeah, went out with her, and we came here, and I remember driving down Bell Road. And there was nothing past the Lowe's or the big department store. All this was flat desert. And I'm saying, wait a second, we're going to have spring training here in a year and a half? Sure enough, a year and a half go by, and I came here and I saw this beautiful facility and am just marveled by what a great place Arizona is to have spring training. Again, I was the guy that was the least guy in the organization that wanted to move our facility to Arizona, and now that we're here, I wouldn't go back to Florida for all the money in the world. I'll give you two great examples. In Fort Myers, our closest road trip was Sarasota, Florida, and it was an hour-and-a-half drive. In Orlando, our shortest trip was Plant City, that was 45 minutes. Our longest trip here, I think, is 35, 40 minutes. And if we could get some extension of Bell Road from the freeway down here, it would cut about 20 minutes off. But, I am so thrilled to be a part of this complex and the Kansas City Royal organization. Again, I've been with them since 1971. This is the time of year I look forward to the most. I played 21 years in the major leagues, and I've been coming down to spring training ever since I retired in '93. And for me to be able to put on a baseball uniform and partake in baseball activities and go to games here and go to games on the road, sit in the dugout, watch batting practice, hit fungos and things like that, it is a thrill. You can never take the boy out of the game of baseball. And when I come down here, I'm a little boy again. I was just informed that this was voted. Now, this is 11 years old, I believe, Mayor. This was voted the second best complex in the Cactus League right here. And this is 11 years old. And there's been some new ones. Goodyear has one. Camelback Park has some. And for us to be 11 years old and still be voted the number 2 behind, what's that, Talking Stick? Talking Stick. The one out there by the casino. That says something about the complex that we have here.
We're going to go right into our little Q&A session because we know you're on a schedule here. And I thought it would be interesting to just talk a little bit about your role in spring training, what you enjoy working with some of the young players and becoming, an integral part of setting the tone for the Royals season.
Well, I don't travel with the team at all during the season. I kind of had this relationship with the Royals when I retired. I had one child. The next year I had 2 children, and the third year I had 3 children. And the first couple of years I did some traveling for them, and I thought to myself, I wanted to be a part of my kids' lives. And I have 3 boys. And I see so many baseball players get married today at an early age, and they play baseball till they're 35 or 40, get into coaching, and yet they never have a chance to see their kids. Even at home, when a baseball player is at home, he goes to the ballpark at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and doesn't get home till 11:30. I didn't want to be that way. I have 3 boys, and I wanted to be a part of their lives. So I told the Royals, hey, my family's going to come first. And that's what the Royals' belief is right now. Dayton Moore, when he gives his speech to the players the first day of spring training, he says, guys, your family is number 1, baseball is number 2. Keep it that way. It'll make life simple. And so since I don't travel with them during the road, all I do is I offer suggestions to the players. I offer suggestions to some of the hitters. I offer suggestions to the hitting coaches who they will be dealing with all summer. And we discuss players, and during the games, I'll sit in the locker room or in the dugout with them, and we'll just sit there and talk about baseball. I'll tell them old experiences, and I'll say, on that ball right there, I think you should have been standing at second instead of standing at first. That ball should have been a double, and it would have been a double if you would have ran hard from first base or from the batter's box to first base. But you see so many times in baseball today where a guy gets a base hit and just jogs to first. Well, that wasn't the case with me when I played. Every time I got a single, I thought it was a double. And I'm just trying to bring the aggressive style back to the Kansas City Royals, the way we used to play baseball in the 70s and the 80s, when at one time we were considered one of the finest organizations in baseball. I'm trying to help them get back to that point right now.
You mentioned that, George, the finest organization in baseball. There was a time when the Kansas City Royals were the most innovative organization. Schools in Latin America, their farm system was absolutely premier, set the tone, the ideas and innovation in baseball. It's changed over the last couple decades. How have you looked at this change, and what's your assessment of it in trying to get back to where the Royals once were?
Well, I think number 1, and Dayton Moore has done a really good job of it, they're building a very strong farm system. The Royals do not have the type of money the Yankees and all the big spenders where they can go out and sign guys for $25 million over 10 years. We don't have that. We have to develop our own players, and we've developed a bunch of them. We were just considered 2 years ago the best minor league system in all of baseball. Unfortunately, we had to trade 3 of our top prospects to get James Shields and Wade Davis because we really needed help in our starting pitching. But I think what Dayton's done is he's built up a farm system, and we've seen Wave 1 come through, and that's Hosmer, Moustakas, Perez, and guys like that. Wave 2 was the Will Myers and the Leonards and the Montgomerys and the Odorizzi's. Now Wave 3 is on his way, and we're going to continue, in my opinion, to keep on going out and drafting good players, teaching them the proper way to play baseball, get them to the major leagues as fast as possible, and if we need to trade them when they're in the minor leagues, get quality players for them, and that's exactly what he's done.
George, I mentioned this in your introduction, and I think it'd be a really neat reflection because to me, and I'm not sure why George Brett doesn't get the attention of the achievements that he's accomplished in his baseball career, but I go back to hitting 390. Hitting 390. Can you share a story and what you remember most about that remarkable season that you could share with us today?
Yeah, my father was always real pushy. I'm the youngest of 4 boys, and all 3 of my older brothers played professional baseball. My brother Ken played 12 years in the major leagues, and my brother Bobby and John never made it to the major leagues. But I was the youngest, and I was always compared to them. And I'll never forget coming home after that season. I went home for Thanksgiving, and my father, the first thing he said to me, I missed by the way, I missed it by 5 hits for the whole season. And if I would have got 5 more hits, I would have hit 400. And the first thing my dad said to me when I walked into the house, he says, "You mean to tell me you couldn't have got 5 more goddamn hits?" I never set out to hit 390. I never set out to hit 400. I'll tell you a funny story about that. The day I went over 400, we were in Kansas City, and we were going down to play Texas the next day. Bob Fischel, who used to be the American League PR director, I believe, and prior to that was the PR director for the New York Yankees in 1961 when Roger Maris hit 61 home runs. And so what Bob did is he called our PR director, Dean Vogelar, and said, "Dean, you got to help George. I never did anything to really help Roger. The media is going to get worse and worse by the week as long as he's over 400. And so what Dean Vogelar did is Dean organized a half-hour press conference before and after every game. And that did make it a lot easier. Rather than me talking to 15, 20 different guys and answering the same question 20 times, I just had to answer it once. And I think that really, really helped me deal with it. When it got to a point, there's 2 weeks to go in the season, I was still over 400 and more people were coming in. And then all of a sudden, I tried to do the one thing that I didn't do the prior month. I tried to hit 400. I was having fun. We had a 20-game lead. It didn't matter if we won or lost the game. All it mattered to the media is of how many hits I got. And all of a sudden, after talking about this 400 number for so long, it became important for me to do it. So then I tried to do it, and obviously, when you put so much pressure on yourself, your swing's not as fluid. And once I got down to 390, I really started pressing. It got down to 383, and there was 5 games to go on the season. All the media had left to go back home because there was no way I was going to hit 400. I hit 500 the last 5 games and got it back up to 390. And I came to the ballpark knowing that if I went 5 for 5 the last day, that I could hit 500 or 400. And my manager was Jim Fry, and I came to the ballpark in anticipation of going out there and playing. And he said, "You're not playing. It's the last game of the year. We got a 20-game lead. We have playoff series starting in 2 days against the Yankees." I said, "Well, just let me have an at-bat. If I make an out, take me out. As long as I keep getting hits, let me stay in there. You know, this opportunity might not come up a little bit." He said, "George, let me ask you one stupid question. Is winning the World Series more important than hitting 400? And I said, "Yes." He said, "You're not playing." I said, "Okay."
Okay, we're going to go with one more question. George is on a tight schedule here. State of the game. I mean, you've played at 70s, 80s, early 90s. The talent today, we see it now globally with the World Baseball Classic, and we'll touch on that in a few minutes. But give us an assessment of players of yesteryear, players today as you see it.
I see these guys. I don't know if I could make some of these teams. These guys are good. These guys are so much more athletic. They're so much stronger. They're so much faster. They're so much bigger. The one thing that I don't think they do as well as we did when I played back in the 70s is their instincts, their game awareness isn't what it was. We played a lot more baseball, I think, as kids than these guys did, and we were always doing something. For instance, I was never in my basement or my den playing computer video games. You know, that's what people do now. A lot of these kids in the major leagues, that's how they grew up, playing all these games. I was always out playing baseball. I had very good baseball instincts, and I don't think their instincts are as good as the old players, but as far as their athletic abilities, their strength, and things like that, these guys are good. And I remember how nervous I would get before a game. I remember how nervous I would get before a spring training game. These guys don't get nervous. I don't know what it is, but they are a lot of fun to watch. I tell you, this 5 weeks, 6 weeks that I'm down here, I go to all the games. I can't wait for the games to start and just not only watch the Kansas City Royals, but all the young kids coming up and all the stars that have proven themselves over the last 5 or 6 years in Major League Baseball. I'm still a baseball fan, and I'm still the biggest Kansas City Royal fan in the world. But it's still fun to come and watch all these guys play because these guys are really, really good. And with the World Baseball thing coming up this week, it's going to be a lot of fun.
George, what a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for sharing some time with us. George Brett, come on. What do you say? Mike Swanson, good to see you, former D-back PR guy. George Brett, you know, there's been a few constants out here in Surprise, and as George was mentioning, the phenomenal growth over the last 10, 11, 12 years and what's happened out here, there's been a constant, and his name has been Mark Coronado, a guy that kind of guided through some of the issues maybe that many of us don't really get a grasp on, but a guiding light, a visionary, a guy who understood there was opportunity out here and has been a constant force to promote Surprise, and not just the spring training facilities, but the tennis events and all of the events that come out here. And it's a pleasure to introduce to you now a guy that has been there time in and time out, Mark Coronado, our Cactus League president. Mark, come on up here with a few words.
And Jude, that $1,000 check will be coming to you very quickly. Jude is part of a tradition here. When we started here in 2003, Jesse McGuire actually played the national anthem on a dirt home plate right there where home plate is today. Jude was our first MC, and he's come back graciously 11 years in a row. And he's a true friend of the Rec Campus. I want to thank all of you for coming today. This is by far, in my 20 years of being a part of the Cactus League Association, by far one of the most successful events. And it's because of the corporate and the community partnerships that all of you have come forward with this year. We couldn't have done it alone. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Sanderson Ford and Dave Kimmerly and Max Surstens, HKS and Mo Stein, Populous, Dave Bauer, Morchison Construction, George Forrestal, Playball Magazine, Cheryl Green, Aramark, Mr. Bill Cupo, and Golden Eagle, Mike Oglesby, and many more of you. The Cactus League looks to become much more corporately connected, much more politically connected, and it's our goal that we trumpet that message. That message is that the Cactus League collectively 12 months a year is a $632 million industry. I call it that corporation on the mountain of prosperity. Now, I'd like to also introduce today some people who are very, very important to this organization, the association. If some of the Cactus League association members are out there, could you please stand up and be recognized? These are the folks that get it done at all the facilities throughout the Cactus League, beginning now and until the end of March. Please stand up and be recognized. Cactus League Association membership. Thank you for all you do. The Cactus League is led by a board that works very hard. I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce the board. Bridget Binsbacher from the Peoria Diamond Club, Nathan Torres from the City of Goodyear, Jeff Meyer from the Scottsdale Charros, and Chris Calcaterra from the City of Peoria. Our past president, Brad Curtis, with the Tempe Diablos, is not with us today, and I'd like to thank him for his past service. This Cactus League facility and others throughout the valley would not be successful without the volunteer organizational support. Those volunteers who put endless and countless dedicated hours and become the ambassadors of our facility. The Mesa Hohocoms, the Scottsdale Charros, the Peoria Diamond Clubs, and our own Surprise Sundancers. A nice round of applause for our volunteer organizations, which make us great. And finally, I will leave you with this. This is truly, and our mayor trumpets this all the time, regional partnership. regional partnership will get you to that success on the mountain. And the mountain for us is really built on cornerstones with 3 major partners. I see Ms. Henry here. We're coming a weekly event that you and I are getting together. But the Arizona Office of Tourism, Ms. Henry and Mark Stanton, we want to thank AOT for their great partnership here throughout the years. The Arizona Commerce Authority, Mr. Greg Linneman and his folks. Greg, if you're here, I know I saw you check in. Greg? And the Arizona Stadium Tourism Authority, Tom Sadler and his folks right out in front here. We look to work and get closer with them and become a partner that helps them stabilize and become a force not just this decade, the next decade, but for decades to come. So, Tom, thank you for your partnership. So, on behalf of the Cactus League, I'd like to say again, thank you for coming. This is a success story today, and we hope that success continues to grow. On behalf of the board, on behalf of our membership, thank you for supporting us. And I was talking to Bob Hart from Hunt Construction, and he officially told me that I can announce that next year this event will be held at the new stadium in Mesa, and so I'm holding them to it. So have a good day, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you again, Mark. I've had a chance to know the Joe Garagiola, the Garagiola family for quite some time, and maybe it's that Italian connection. I don't know what it is, Joe, but when I first came to town, there was a little bit of a promotion we did at KTAR Radio, and it was the first few months I'm here back in 1989, and it spoke of the love of baseball that listeners and fans had, and we were at that time with Joe's dad trying to push the whole idea of bringing Major League Baseball to town, and we actually created a baseball field near downtown. We called Field of Dreams, and it was built by listeners. It was built by everyday folks and the Baseball Alumni Association, and then Mayor Terry Goddard, and Joe Garagiola Jr. and Joe Garagiola Sr. and Joe Black and many of the greats that have come before us that wanted to push and understood that it was more than a sport. It was really life-changing. And I say that because we've already created in a short period of time just some phenomenal memories. Joe Garagiola Jr. was a big part as architect of that 2001 World Series team and the tremendous early success of the Diamondbacks organization. He's now moved on to his position as Senior VP of Standards and On-Field Operations. He's playing a very big role in the World Baseball Classic and generally all-around good guy in the rough-and-tumble world of professional sports. It's an honor and a pleasure to bring up to the podium now Joe Garagiola Jr. Joe, come on up.
Thanks, Jude. My official duty here today is on behalf of Commissioner Seelig and everybody at Major League Baseball to welcome, welcome first of all the teams back here to Arizona, and to welcome any out-of-town visitors to Arizona. And for those of us who live here, well, I'm afraid once again a secret is out, folks. You look around this place, this weather, and it's that time of year again. I don't think there's anybody, in fact, I'm sure there is no one, associated with a team who would not tell you that spring training is their favorite time of the year, and there is no comparison. And there are 2 very important reasons for that. One is we play almost all day games, and the second is they don't count. And trust me, if you have ever been affiliated with a team, that combination, and then when you put on top of it this kind of weather, and in Arizona, the fact that our longest road trip, as George alluded to, is probably 35 to 40 minutes, you have essentially created baseball perfection. I'm sure all the general managers and managers would agree with me that if we could figure out some way to pay the players doing this, we'd never leave Arizona or Florida. We'd just stay here all year and do this because it's so great. You know, I can't come to an event like this, a place like this, and not for a second kind of reflect back on, and there are plenty of people out here who were around in those days, not all that long ago, when the whole Cactus League enterprise was in really desperate trouble. It is literally almost impossible to believe that now, standing here or over at Goodyear or Talking Stick, but back in the late 80s, when we were down to 8 teams, one of our teams had left, another one was publicly talking about going to Florida. It was pretty grim. Fortunately, we had some tremendous people who were great baseball fans as well as great Arizonans. Governor Rose Mofford and Dwight Patterson, Pat Patterson, who Jude referred to before, stepped up and said, you know what, we have a great thing here. It kind of fell in our laps, and we're going to lose it if we don't do something. And in a truly remarkable, I think, example of regional cooperation, cities kind of putting aside their parochial issues for the greater good. Here we are today, 15 teams, teams in Florida, trying to figure out ways to come out here. I remember being in a meeting with another great friend of baseball in the Cactus League, Herb Drinkwater, the beloved mayor of Scottsdale. He had a press conference to announce the new Giant Stadium that was going to be built, and he said, I predict one day the Cactus League will draw over 1 million people. And the only two sounds from the media were dropping of microphones and laughter. And it's like, come on, Herb, come on. Well, as they say, you can look it up, to quote Casey Stengel. It's a wonderful thing. It is great to be here. This is going to be a unusually exciting spring out here in Arizona, because the first week in March, we will have one of the opening rounds of the World Baseball Classic, an event that occurs every 4 years. Down at Chase Field and out at Talking Stick, we'll have the national teams of Mexico, Canada, Italy, and Team USA working out, playing some exhibition games, and then playing round one. So plenty of time to see Cactus League games, but I urge you to take some time and catch one of the World Baseball Classic teams in action, because these are unique events. It's a big deal to the players to be able to put the uniform of their country on and play as teammates with guys that they compete against the rest of the year. So another great thing in Arizona that really traces its origins back to the Cactus League. Because I will tell you this, and I absolutely believe this to be true, but for the Cactus League and but for the way communities out here stepped up, there would be no Arizona Diamondbacks. There just wouldn't be. Because the attitude in baseball in those days was, well, if you people can't even hang on to the baseball you already have, why in the world should we think about putting an expansion franchise out there? So if we let the Cactus League go away, there's no Diamondbacks. I'm still foreclosing deeds of trust. I mean, it's a horrible story, and I don't even want to think about it. So anyway, that all happened. We're all here. It's a beautiful day. Everybody's 0-0, full of optimism. As I say, it's the best time of the baseball year. So again, to everybody, local, out of state, welcome, and let's get these games going. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. We have another special guest for you. I don't think there was a more dominant pitcher in baseball, period, during Greg Maddux's tenure in baseball. You could just knock down those wins. And next year, by the way, he will be eligible for the Hall of Fame. And can you say slam dunk? Now working with the Texas Rangers. Let's bring him over here. 3 words here. Greg Maddux. Come on over here, Greg.
Thank you.
I want to start off with just let the fans know what you're doing. You're working with your brother with the Rangers. Give us an idea of your role with Texas now in your second year.
Well, right now I'm just kind of an extra coach. I'm here for spring training. I help out mostly in spring training. I do a little bit of stuff during the season with the AA and the 3A club. And just there to kind of watch my brother's back a little bit, make sure he doesn't screw up too bad, and just try to help him out the best I can.
Give us an idea as you await next year. The numbers are astounding in what you put together consistently in your career. But now you've had some time to reflect on your many years in Major League Baseball. What are you most proudest of your accomplishments?
Well, I think probably just being able to play as long as I did. I think just having the opportunity to wear the uniform for all those years and stay healthy. You know, met a lot of good friends in the game. I'm kind of seeing that now as I've been out for a little bit, and it's kind of nice when you run into somebody down here in spring training, and I play with that guy, played against that guy, knew that guy. So I think probably most proud of the fact that I was able to play as long as I could, and obviously winning the World Series probably ranks up there pretty high too.
I think that when you look back at the way you did it with surgical precision, is astounding to many baseball observers. Pitching today, though, we see more and more of the emphasis on, hey, the guy's got to throw 95. I'm not saying it's been a lot of years, but pitching during your era to pitching today, what are some of the challenges and biggest differences as you work with these young arms in Texas?
Well, I think you throw 95, you get drafted. That's great. All 95 does is get you drafted. So you get drafted, and then you learn how to pitch. And I think that's the challenge, I think, is trying to teach the young pitchers how to pitch, trying to get them to recognize what the hitter's trying to do off you and what pitch you throw the best can counteract that. So I think it's still the same thing. Whether you're throwing 95 or 85, you still got to locate your fastball and change speeds.
You played, of course, for many years at one of the most beloved parks in the game, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about that experience for so many years with the Cubs, to be part of that fan nation, to be part of that passion, to be part of that rich history. What are your reflections there?
Chicago's a pretty special place. Nothing beats Wrigley Field, that's for sure. And the fans are fanatics. They're diehards. They love the Cubs, win or lose. They come out. Wrigley Field, there's a baseball game, but it's also an event, and it's just, it's special. It's special to stand out there on that field and see the ivy and see it packed every day and try to win.
I think what's also special about it is the numbers you put up there, and when you really talk maybe a little inside baseball, when you talk to guys, and the late Ron Santo was a dear friend, they would always say, depending on that wind, how difficult it is to do what you did consistently, because it was also one of the more difficult, unpredictable weather parks in all of baseball.
Absolutely. It changed your game plan. That's the first thing you did when you went to the park on the day you were pitching. You looked up there at the center field flag, and you looked at it because you knew that the wind was going to determine a lot of your pitch selection that day. So you had to take the wind into account. It's like golf. The wind is your friend, right? So when it's blowing in, you have to pitch accordingly as to when it's blowing out.
What would the Hall of Fame mean to you? I look back at your achievements. It hasn't happened yet. I believe it will happen. But when you just think about it in your own mind, what comes to mind?
Well, I don't really think about it, a whole lot. I guess when the time comes, we'll find out. But, the Hall of Fame to me is kind of like the ultimate all-star team. You know what I mean? It's like, you play during the season, you make the all-star team, you retire, you do good enough, you make the Hall of Fame. I kind of look at it that way. And, it's always about the game, though. It's the game of baseball is why you play it and why you love it, why you watch it, why you sleep it, eat it, drink it, all that. And just being able to go on a field like that, whether it's a spring training field or Wrigley Field in Chicago, just having an opportunity to stand out there on that mound is pretty special, and that's kind of what it's all about.
Greg, I asked the same question to George. The players today brought up in the video game age versus the era that you played in. He certainly suggested much more athletic, but fundamentals, maybe a little bit of a difference, and in terms of sense of the game, a little bit of a difference. What's your take?
Well, the older you get, the better I was, right? It's one of those things. But, the pitchers now, you watch these guys are right over there on the other field throwing right now. You watch these guys throw, and they actually throw a lot better than we used to, that's for sure. These guys are throwing hard. They're bigger, stronger, faster. But I think the point maybe George was making was that we played more. I think now, I see it now, especially with my kid, there's a lot of club ball. There's a lot of scout teams. Kids only play one sport. I think we played all the sports. We played a lot of basketball. We played football and all that stuff growing up. And, I think some of that does transfer onto that field over there when the game's going on. And I think that might be something that they're missing out on. But, that's our job as coaches to try to help them catch up fast.
Well, we'll let you get back to your job as coach. Greg Maddux, how about it, folks?
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, for spending time with us. Thank you, buddy. Thanks. I want to acknowledge, how many of you out there saw the movie A League of Their Own? How can you not miss Madonna out there on the field? I don't know. I guess maybe Elma worked with her on her pitching motion. I don't know. But we have a woman here, Elma Weiss. Come on up here if we can get a few words from you. She was in the real world, the real player from a league of their own, Elma Weiss. A few reflections on her baseball career. How about it? Come on, nice welcome here for Elma.
Thank you very much. I knew this was going to happen to me. I should have stayed home. But every time I'm asked to something like this, I say it's going to be a big, no, it's nothing, just a few people, you know, you sort of, well, I've been fooled before, but this is the biggest crowd I've talked to for a while, and I'm amazed that I'm up here and I don't even know what I'm saying, but anyway, I did jot down a few things you might be interested in knowing. Back in the early days of the 1940s, we had the A, B, C, D leagues and plenty of baseball leagues, but the war came in 41 to Pearl Harbor, as you all know, and the men were drafted or volunteered, and the men who had played baseball were no longer here. So Wrigley, you've heard that name from Chicago, he got the idea that women softball players could be taught to play baseball and fill the void for the baseball players who were now in the Army. So in 1943, he organized the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. And most of us who were playing softball tried out for the league, and about 500 women over the years were selected and did play baseball. We were softball players that were brought up in softball, and we had a lot to learn. We threw underhand, and now we had to learn to throw overhand. The base paths were shorter. The rules were Major League Baseball rules, and the women were trained to make this switch. Well, fortunately, they did. And during the years of our league, there were 500 women who have played in the 13 years that our league existed. Now there are only 189 left. They do pass away. We had players from the USA, from Canada, and from Cuba, and they were trained in Florida and played in the Midwest. We had 2 teams in each of Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. That was the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. And I played for 2 years in Peoria, Arizona. I've had a lot of interesting experiences, none of which have been in baseball. I played in 17 ball games in 2 years, and finally I thought, when they called me, well, you're going to start this game, I thought, well, I'm finally getting my chance. And I did play, and I was lucky. I caught a fly in right field and was able to throw it home and catch the runner stealing from third for a double play, which is the biggest thing I can remember about baseball. And I was pleased for this. But anyway, I'm happy to be out here, and I am a small percentage, a small piece of the women who did play in baseball. And we're very good. Our league existed for 14 years, and when the war was over, of course, the men came back, and the women went home. And they've tried to make women's professional baseball leagues since then, but they have never been successful. But during the time that I played, we did travel around by Greyhound bus, and you've seen the movie, A League of Their Own, and it was pretty much true. The uniforms were true. We got on the buses and traveled, and that's true. We had our rules. The girls ranged from 17 years of age up to about 26. And I only lasted 2 years because I had already been in the Navy during the war for 2 years. And I'd been to school. I have 3 degrees, a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate. And I think in the 90 years that I've lived, I've had a lot of fun. I've done a lot of things. But one of the greatest that I can remember is playing baseball for the All-American Girls Professional League. And I thank you for asking me here.
Elma, just a quick question. I've got to ask you, you got to give me your honest appraisal. of Madonna's throwing motion? What did you think of Madonna as a baseball player? We all want to know.
Well, actually, I was on the same team she was, but I didn't know she was going to be important, or I would have paid more attention to her. I guess she was a good ball player. She was one of our best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 70th anniversary of the start of that league. 70th anniversary, and we have Mayor Walcott with a nice pin presentation here. Mayor?
Well, first of all, I just want to say it's an honor to share the stage with you. For someone who has truly broken many gender barriers, as you just described to us, it's really a pleasure to share the stage with you. We just like to give you a token of our appreciation. And perhaps if we actually had women's leagues training in Arizona, it would still exist. So maybe we should give that a thought. But I very much appreciate your being here, and I thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. Thank you so much. Thank you. I also want to say one last thing, too. Many of the speakers here today have talked about the importance of the Cactus League and the importance of our communities that have supported the Cactus League. And I can tell you that those of us who are on the elected side of this business, we get those questions from people who aren't baseball fans all the time. Why is this so important? I think you've heard a number of numbers today why it's so important. It's not only important to our individual communities, but it's important to the West Valley, to the East Valley, to Arizona as a whole. And so I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my own council people who are here today. My Vice Mayor, Jim Biondo, and Council Member Roy Villanueva, and all those who couldn't attend here today. Without the support, the unified support of your mayors and your council members, these kinds of activities just wouldn't happen. But you have the strong support of the cities in Arizona, and we're so proud to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you again, Mayor. You know, think about it, and sometimes we forget when we live out here that when you make that pilgrimage, and it's like you can't wait to get out of the snow and cold, and you come in from Cleveland or Chicago or Cincinnati to come out here, it is really, really extra special. I think, and I'm guilty of this myself, we take this for granted, and yet those people back there that want to see their baseball teams can't wait to get here, and then they enjoy this kind of hospitality and friendliness. It's an industry that all Arizonans should be very, very proud of. And at this point, I want to thank everybody for coming out. It seems to get bigger and bigger. Thank you for coming, and play ball. Thank you.